welcome to the Hans Brinker Leadership Series, Extraordinary Leaders in Extraordinary Times by Adi Partners. I am Sanjay Viswanathan.
COVID-19, the pandemic of this millennium, has changed our daily lives irrevocably. In fact, people fighting this pandemic at the coalface in healthcare, travel, government, non-profit and media deserve recognition. I am Hiral Desai. Sanjay, we've had some amazingly insightful discussions on the show, haven't we? And an overwhelming response is what we've got from our viewers. So, firstly, I would actually want to thank all of you for watching us and following us as well.
Absolutely, Hiral. In fact, as we continue to identify extraordinary leaders in these extraordinary times and share world-class practices to combat COVID-19 and create a cohort of champions like the gentleman we have today who can influence and energize this war against coronavirus. This series provides everyday leaders a platform to share the best practices and appreciate their efforts in the fight against COVID-19. Our journey will take us to India, the Middle East, UK, North America, Far East, and China.
In fact, in our previous episodes, we've spoken to champions from healthcare, non-profit, and the hospitality sector as well. Today, we have a champion of industry. Let me introduce you to Vaitheeswaran, Vaithi, as he's popularly known in the industry, a serial entrepreneur and co-founder of Again Drinks. He's an internet industry veteran who pioneered the e-commerce industry in India when he actually co-founded India's first pure-play online retail company called Fabmart.com in 1999. Vaithi has advised global brands like Deloitte, Diageo, and the Tata Group in their digital initiatives. He's also the author of the best-selling book, Failing to Succeed, the story of India's first e-commerce company.
Delighted to have you on the Hans Brinker Leadership Series, Vaithi. Welcome to the show.
Absolutely, Sanjay. The privilege is entirely mine. And as I was telling you earlier, I've been quite humbled to receive this invitation to be on this show, given the galaxy of accomplished people who come before that. And, I'm quite privileged to be on the show. So thank you for having me here, Sanjay and Hiral, both of you. Absolute pleasure.
Thank you, Vaithi. One of the things that we want to kick off with is you're one of those rare leaders in business today whose e-commerce adventure goes back to 2 decades. What made you become an e-commerce entrepreneur in '99? And of course, was it different then versus now?
Yeah, so it's an interesting question, Sanjay. I must tell you my normal response when people ask me about this, I tell them, look, I'm probably the only entrepreneur in India who started a pure play e-commerce company in the last century, right? Because everybody else came after 2000. So what really happened, I'll quickly tell you a very interesting incident, is I used to work for Wipro and I'd spent close to a decade there and I wanted a change in whatever I was doing. So I actually went and requested a change into the e-commerce division of Wipro, but for whatever reason, and I think Wipro was in e-commerce services, not e-commerce pure play. They were not selling; they were creating platforms, and I didn't even know the difference at that time. E-commerce sounded a very fascinating word, so I said I want to be in e-commerce, and they said no, you're not ready for it. You're not fit for whatever, because I didn't have a software background. Later, I was given some other project which required me to connect with a whole lot of people outside India. And I was struggling to call them on the phone, and there was time zones and all of that, and telephone calls, all those days, no cell phones, all expensive from office. So somebody said, why don't you send, I know it sounds very hilarious now. So somebody said, this was in 96 or 97. Somebody said, why don't you send them an email? And I said, what is an email? They said, you don't know an email? I said, no, what is an email? An email is you send a message from your computer, and we had those big desktop computers. So you send a message to somebody and they will reply and you can connect with them. And my first question was, okay, that sounds interesting because I'm unable to get phone lines. How much does it cost? And somebody said it's free. And I was bowled over. I said, what do you mean it's free? I can connect with anybody in the world for free? He said, yes. So I got a Hotmail ID. That was my first email ID. I didn't even know what email was. And when I was browsing the email, I saw an ad which said buy books. And I clicked on that and I landed on this website called Amazon.com, which was selling books. And I was very fast. I just kept browsing, and I said, oh, these people have many books. So just for the heck of it, I added one book to cart. I learned what is e-commerce, and I put my address, and I realized I could actually. I mean, I didn't pay, but I realized if I paid, I would get a book delivered. After a few days, I got the courage. I said, let me put my card, and I put a card, and I waited, and a book arrived home, and I was blown over by that experience because suddenly, in India, we've all, including us, had grown up knowing that the only way to shop is to go to a shop and look at the shopkeeper, meet him, and look at physical merchandise and buy. And suddenly I said, oh, here is this shopkeeper. I mean, I called them the shopkeeper selling books to me, and they would never meet me. And to me, that concept of e commerce was the thing that fascinated me, that you can actually sell stuff to customers you will never meet in your life. Even today, 2 decades later, it is the essence of e commerce that continues to fascinate me. E-commerce has changed, but I still think essentially it's a business where a shopkeeper sells to his customers without meeting them. To me, that's the fascination. And I said, boss, we have to do this in India. So when we got a chance to start something, and I spoke to some like-minded friends, this was the thing that we wanted to do. So that's the story.
Amazing. So, what inspired you and Sandeep to start a beverage company in what is already a crowded market? Take us through the story of again.
Yeah. So the reason this happened is, the interesting story here is Sandeep's son used to play tennis, and he used to play tennis at a junior competitive level, internationally competitive level, and he was ranked some 100, 200 something in the world. And he had a coach who was from Europe, and the European coach, I think French coach, basically told him that look, the best way for him to grow, not just the game, because at that level it's not enough to play well. You also have to make sure your body also grows along with the game. Is to make sure that you regularly consume beverages with certain specifications. And he went all over the place in the market trying to find the drinks with those specifications and realized that it exists. Most of the beverages that he found in the market had either sugar or preservatives or both, or they all were having chilled requirements. And we know from our experience as a retailer that's a dangerous thing to buy in India because it's essentially opening yourself to contamination, or had very limited shelf life. So product had 3 days, 5 days, 7 days shelf life. So there was nothing which met all those conditions. So obviously he didn't get the beverage that he wanted, but he connected with me. He came home and I was busy writing my book at that time, closing my book, and he came and said, what are you doing? I said, I'm writing a book. He said, forget it. You're not too old to write books. You can write books later. Let's do another startup. I said, no, we don't do what startup? I'm already 54. He said, forget it. There's a massive opportunity in the market. I've spent the last 2 months trying to get a beverage which I want, and it doesn't exist. So I thought he was talking of a stocking problem. Later, we realized that it doesn't exist. So as we researched, we came across another fascinating fact. The US Department of Agriculture lists 5 different food groups as critical for the human body, which is dairy, fruits, vegetables, proteins, and grains. So we said, okay, let's look for beverages which use all of them. And we realized that also didn't exist. So we just got, okay, we said, well, this is now worth doing it. We said, let's make a beverage which use all these food groups and meets all those conditions of no sugar, no preservative, no color, no flavor, but ambient and 90 days shelf life.
Absolutely, Vaiti. I mean, that's an interesting story because the moment you have a solution to a problem, especially in the F&B space, that's something which is always called an innovation as well.
Yeah.
However, when we look at the beverage industry as a whole, would you say it's a function of distribution rather than the product? Because what happens is, however good your product is, till the time your supply chain is not sorted out, the awareness is not really going to be there. So, how do you address your supply chain, especially during times of COVID?
Yeah. So you asked an interesting question, but Hiral, what I'm going to do, I'm going to answer them in two parts. But the first part is also an important part, which you said that is it an essence of distribution? When we started this, we were, like I told you, we didn't have any experience in the FMCG industry, so we did a whole lot of reading, and I have been reading about FMCG and building consumer brands like crazy. And I also had the opportunity to meet some very good academicians in this area from USA, North America, leading business schools who had come. I got connected to them, and I realized that a couple of people that I was talking to were truly experts in this area. And this is what they told me, Hiral. And since then I've taken that to heart. The essence of an FMB or an FMCG business or a consumer business basically has only three moving parts. The first moving part is the brand. The second moving part is the distribution. And the third moving part is the product innovation. Now, assuming we are now competing with, say, large FMCG beverage giants, which is what we're doing, right? We can spend billions of dollars, but we will never build a brand like any of them. Or we can spend several $100 million, but we will never be able to come close to them as far as penetration and distribution is concerned. Which means out of the three, two moving parts are no longer available to us. We can't compete in those areas. So the only place or platform left for people like us who are starting fresh in an F&B space is to only compete on the product innovation space. There is no choice. So we are not saying we will outcompete and build a bigger brand, or we will outcompete and build a deeper distribution. What we're saying is we'll build a great product. So actually we have no choice. It's no, it's not that we've thought about it deeply. We actually have no choice. We either make a great product to have a chance of competing with the giants, or we can't compete in this space. So that's what we have done. So our whole strategy is to say, can we keep making interesting, innovative products that others don't have and build some traction? So that's the first part. Second part, in COVID times, what we've done, we've run into issues on supply chain. And one of the challenges of our supply chain is our factory. We are based in Bangalore. We launched only in Bangalore, but our factory is in a town called Kanjipuram in Tamil Nadu, which is across the border. Now, one is supply chains got hit for everybody during COVID. We had a double whammy because interstate borders also got shut. And our factory is in Tamil Nadu. Our raw materials are stocked in Bangalore, and we have to take the raw materials to the factory. And initially, the lockdown happened, so there was no travel. After the lockdown got over, the cases in Tamil Nadu just rocketed. And the two districts that got worst affected were Chennai and Kanchipuram, so they shut the border. So we couldn't go. By the time the cases went down there, Bangalore cases went up, so Bangalore shut the border. So between the lockdowns and the interstate border, our supply chain completely got destroyed. In fact, we for large parts of this period, we didn't have any product at all, no stock. And the old stock that we had supplied to the retail stores, they all expired because the store shut. Which means
Right.
all we were doing is taking the products back and just destroying them because there was no sales, nothing. We just had to throw everything away, and no sales because no manufacturing. But now, I mean, we have now hopefully passed the hump and things are improving. We're now beginning to get more reliability, more manufacturing done. So the thing that we managed is we realized that COVID taught us one thing: we cannot be dependent on a supply chain that is controlled by others. Retail stores, somebody else's control. Online platform, somebody else's control. Something happened, they'll shut it down, and we have no place to go. So we said one of the things we will do is we will create our own supply chain. Now, obviously, factory means we're not putting up our factory at this time. We're working with somebody else still. But the sales part, we immediately, even though all of us were sitting at home and working on a virtual, we launched a WhatsApp platform. And we started taking orders direct to customers on our WhatsApp platform. Now, of course, things are going back. Stores are opening. We're now selling on Amazon, Big Basket, everything. But I know I can always fall back on my WhatsApp platform. And we're also launching our own e-commerce site in a couple of weeks. So that's the change that we have quickly brought about to deal with this COVID.
Right. So I think to this, when you're saying that direct to consumer is something that you looked at as well in terms of COVID, do you think that would remain core to the business? Or because India is still a click and mortar retail country, that's something that will continue to remain because e-commerce is something, yes, which has been flourishing. However, the moment you look at an individual e-commerce platform, what happens is for a consumer to go to a particular product e-commerce portal versus going to the Amazons or the Flipkarts of the world, it's way easier because they get a lot of choices on those platforms. So, how would you actually bundle up this entire scenario when you're tapping into the D2C probably phenomenon right now?
You asked a very important question because one of the things that everybody is talking about in these COVID times is that brands are now going D2C. D2C is the essence, and D2C will drive everything, and the future is D2C. I must say, I don't believe all of that. I'm not sure that's the way life will go on because consumer behavior has changed dramatically. They don't go into the stores, but they will change. I mean, vaccines will get. You can't build strategies for a few months, right?
Correct.
Strategies which are there for a few months are temporary tactical issues, but long term strategy has to be based on how consumers react. When vaccines will come sooner or later, by 2022, people will come back, stores will open. E commerce in India, and I think in most parts of the world, gets an undeservingly high amount of media coverage. The reality is, retail anywhere in the world, e-commerce anywhere in the world is still single digit. In America, it's gone to 11%, 12%. In India, it's 2%, 3%, 4%, below 5%. Even in COVID times, it'll go to 6 or 7%. After that, it'll come back to 5%. 95% is still offline. So anybody who says that I'm building a large consumer bond by going only direct to customer actually is not even addressing the market. So you can't build brands like that. You can be a niche player. You can't build brands. So our strategy is, I think we will have to go back to offline, and I'm very clear we will be in offline. We will be offline, we will be in the supermarkets, but I think we will have to figure out how to sell to this change customer. The new customer, when she walks into the supermarkets with her mind a little bit more reassured than she is today, will behave differently. What should retailers do to sell to her is something I think we're all trying to figure out, but they will eventually figure out, and we want to be part of that. I think Amazons of the world and Flipkart, like you said, is absolutely right. The reality is, when I say you buy at Amazon, nobody is worried about buying Again Drinks at Amazon. If you tell a customer we have a new product called Again Drinks, come to againdrinks.com and buy, you're right. People will say it's a new product, it's a new website. It's like changing your job, moving to a new city, and getting married at the same time. I mean, what I've learned in life is you can't do all of them at the same time. Many people do that. They get married, change their job, move to a new city. I mean, you're struggling in your personal life to settle down. You're struggling in a new company. You're struggling in a new city. This is exactly what you do to a customer. New brand, new site, not required. So we're happy selling in Amazon because people don't ask questions. You're used to buying in Amazon. You just have to buy the brand. Place an order. We're saying free shipping. It's done. D2C for us will be a backup strategy. We continue to sell to customers now in WhatsApp. We'll open our e-commerce site, but I don't think we're going to spend boatloads of money trying to drive customers to our e-commerce site. I'm happy if they go because at the essence, like I told you, our strategy is to compete on product innovation. Can I create a website that sells smarter than Amazon? No. Why would I do that? It's not a waste of time. Can I create a beverage that nobody else has? That's what we want to focus on. Wherever customer wants to buy, we're happy to serve her there. That's our strategy.
And when we think about the paths that you're on, what impact would you like again to leave on industry and society?
Sandeep and I first met, and I told you I was just finishing my book, so I was honestly not looking to start up again. And he said, "No, let's do it." So I put two conditions to him, saying, "Look, let's do this, but I need two conditions to be fulfilled before I agree, irrespective of what the startup is." At that time, we had not zeroed in on this beverage thing. I said, one is it must be something that's never been done before. In other words, I didn't want to build India's 147th new e-commerce company. I had no interest in it. So I said it must be something that's never been done before. And the second thing is it must be something that potentially potentially can leave a significant social impact. again drinks, and I'm saying other products also will come. Many other products will come in this space. Together, can we help India become a healthier nation going forward? That's the social impact.
So, how do you see your world for again in a post-COVID era?
Uh, it's a wrong choice of words, and therefore I'm going to say this very carefully. But strangely, things like the COVID actually helps people like us because the demand and the interest and the focus on truly healthy products, not healthy products, because every brand out there making food and beverages claim they are healthy, whether they are or not. I mean, it's a tagline, right? You just say I'm healthy. Pre-COVID, large FMCG brands who had built great distribution, reality was there was no incentive for them to launch a great product. I'm saying this deliberately because large FMCG consumer companies had built great brands and deep distribution, which are the two moving parts. There was no incentive for them to work on the third moving part and create a great product. Because how did it matter? Any of these FMCG brands, they would create an ordinary product, would still sell millions of cases, right? Because they have great distribution and brand. I think that distribution has now been democratized.
Absolutely, it is a lot more easier today. And with regards to where making label claims is concerned, I think you're pretty much right that now the consumer awareness has, in a way, started. The government FSI rules have changed as well, where you cannot really make label claims which actually say you're natural, you're pure, you're healthy, unless and until you as a product are. So that's something where we are moving towards, and I think it's a great social cause that you're looking at. Uh, with this, we did speak about how different it is to be an e-com entrepreneur today. Now, in particular, if you could just help us understand what are the key challenges that an e-com entrepreneur probably could face today to set up and grow his or her business, and how would you advise them to create demand for their brand? Is it the pull or the push that matters more in the post-COVID world, or probably in a click and mortar era?
The first is how you said how challenging is it for somebody to set up an e-commerce company. The reality is it is not. When we started in 99, there were no payment gateways in India. There were less than 3 million people on the internet. Less than 20,000 people shopped online, and they all shopped at amazon.com in the USA. Today there are 500 million people as opposed to 3 million. 500 million people use the internet in India, and more than 75 million people shop online. So
Mm.
there's a large market, and this market just keeps exploding. Penetration levels of are still single digit, which means the internet penetration will go to a billion over a few years. Less than 10% of that would have shopped online. It's an unbelievably large growing market. Second, technology has changed so much that it is now possible for entrepreneurs to set up an e-commerce company in 10 minutes flat, right? If you have a product, you can go to a platform and set up. In our case, we have to write an e-commerce code, which took us 6 months. Today, you can set up a platform and start selling online in 2 days flat. Payment gateways are ready to get integrated. Data points are all getting integrated. Metadata is easily available. So I think it is easier to start. Therefore, is it all hunky dory? No. And now I'm going to answer the second part of the question. Therefore, which I said is counterintuitive. The counterintuitive part to this is it is easy to set up an e-commerce business today, but essentially it is harder to sell today because customers are now very divided. In India, they'll buy from Flipkart, they'll buy from Amazon. So you could go and set up your e-commerce site in 10 minutes flat, but no customer is going to buy. And that's the thing that has changed. So it's easy to set up a business. 20 years back, it was difficult to set up the business, but once you reach a customer, you could build a brand because there was no competing brand. 20 years later, today, it is easier to set up the business, but it's hard to sell because the brands have already been built. So the advice that I would have for people to coming and wanting to do e-commerce business is don't worry about technology. Technology is now available for a price, and the price is very nominal. Anybody could set up an e-commerce company. With just a few people, you can start selling. But here's the challenge for you. You have to sell against Amazon. You have to sell against Flipkart. So the advice I have is unless you're able to sell something that is unique, unless you're able to sell something that Amazon does not have, unless you're able to create something that Amazon is unlikely to start selling on their website, don't waste time. Or alternatively, create merchandise that is unique. Try and make your own merchandise. Try and create something handcrafted. Make something that Amazon is not interested in selling. If you, the only way to win this battle going forward in e-commerce in India is by having unique merchandise. That's the key to success. And if you don't have that, I think you'll struggle. Any entrepreneur. That would be my advice.
Entrepreneurs like you, Vaidhi, are vital to drive any country's economy, certainly India's. And in this whole post-COVID era, what we're beginning to see is fundamental shifts have started to occur in traditional industries, whether it be energy, transportation, hospitality, capital, and so on, right? And of course, retail too. So, in one of the research initiatives that we at Adi did recently, we discovered a very interesting insight that the two segments of society which we think will be the most resilient to change would be students and entrepreneurs. And that's primarily because of their attitude and their fungibility. What's your view, Vaidhi?
Yes, I agree with it. And the reason I agree with it is very simple. COVID is bringing changing our lives in ways that we never thought will happen before, right? It's a totally different world. And every day we are trying to figure out, we're all talking of the new normal, but I think the reality is we don't know what the new normal is yet. The new normal will evolve over the next 12, 18 months. We'll really figure out the impact of COVID next year. And next year means not 2021. I'm talking 2022 is when we'll really know this is the post COVID world. Now, why are students and entrepreneurs the best equipped to do it? Because for the reasons that you mentioned, which is the resilience and the fungibility, and the key thing is because they are at a different stage in their life, students, young students, or even slightly older students, so people, let's say, who are doing post graduation, right? If people who are doing, let's say, after a few years of work experience are doing their MBAs, they're mature students, they're not young students, or people who are just in college, school students, they will be able to adapt to the new world faster than, say, mature people. People, let's say, take somebody who's spent 20 years in a career, is now a vice president in a travel company. What will he or she do if in post-COVID world, right? I mean, a lot of things are going to get so badly impacted. You're not in a position to make the changes that are required to adapt to the new normal, whatever it may be. Students will do it because they're at a stage in their life and career that they can say, okay, this is what I need to do. Let me do this. Okay, the world is shifting here. Let me learn this skill. Okay, I think this is what is the focus area. Can I do something to adapt myself into this new area? Or an entrepreneur will take an advantage of the new normal. An entrepreneur will say, this is how the customer wants to be served. Earlier, she used to want this. Now she wants this. I'll do this for her. So, students will adapt to the new world. Entrepreneurs will find ways to serve the new customer in a new world. Everybody else will struggle. And that's why I agree with you. I think these people will have the benefit of understanding the new world and take advantage of the new situation and adapt A, their life, or B, their businesses to serve the new customer. And therefore, I think they're best equipped. I fully agree with you. I mean, there may be some other classes here and there, but generally, I think students probably, I mean, initially we felt the big impact was on students and education has changed. They have, but they'll eventually, and eventually means in a year's time, they'll figure out what is the new normal and they'll learn from it. I think they're safe.
So, speaking of the new normal, Vaidhi, what skills should today's students, whether it be a young student or a mature student, be focused on learning so that she is successful in the new normal?
I'm sure there are many that are required, but the one that I think strongly will be required, the one skill that I would want them to make sure they have is the ability to collaborate digitally and successfully. It's not easy. A digital collaboration, students, my son is doing his MBA in the US. He came back after 6 months. He's now here, spending 3 months here because the course have gone online. He'll go back, but the course continues, right? He used to work with his classmates in his room and do project work and all of that. Now he's sitting here in India. Some of the students have gone to their countries, some have remained in America, different time zones. You still have to complete the project. You're working online. It's digital collaboration. I think it is not easy. No Zoom, no Teams can make this happen like we were doing, right? Like they were doing, sitting next to each other and solving problems and working together. It's not the same. So the ability to still continue to collaborate digitally and successfully. Can they collaborate digitally? Of course they can. We've got Zoom, we've got Teams, we've got WebEx. Anybody can collaborate digitally. Can they collaborate efficiently, successfully? I don't know. It's not going to be easy because I think 6 months down the line, work from home. I think we're all fatigued with this work from home, right? We all want to go back to office because we know it's not how things work. Efficiencies went up, now it's coming down. Initially, people were saying, "Oh, I love this work from home. My productivity has gone up." I am not sure. I think productivity has now gone down because people are now tired of this. So, to be able to successfully collaborate is a skill that they will need. Second, the ability to talk virtually, like I'm talking to both of you and presenting my point of view, but this is in a sense more a debate and a chat. But if it's a very serious discussion in a college and you want to work and present your point, the ability to compellingly present your point of view virtually as you did in a physical world, I think is a skill they have to learn. Because gone are the days where you would sit in front of students, in front of teachers, in front of faculty. Gone are the days where regularly you'll go into conference rooms and present your point of view has changed. So the ability to make compelling points on a virtual world is a new skill. And maybe that's part of digital collaboration and successful itself. So that's the key point. Can they digitally collaborate successfully? If they can do that, then I think it's a skill. Otherwise, I suspect that they will struggle.
That's a well-made point, Vaidhi, that with regards to digital collaboration, whether it is successful and efficient, that's something which could be a challenge going ahead, and that's something which needs to be actually looked at. With this, Vaidhi, in your book, Failing to Succeed, now, based on your experiences with India's first e-commerce for FabMart, you actually have talked about a set of inexplicable events that actually destroyed a profitable business. Do you think COVID would qualify as one such for today's entrepreneurs? And what would your advice be to them to address this unprecedented trial by fire?
So the first part of your question, when I wrote the book and the blurb, and some of those blurbs are actually written by publishers, so they're, I mean, the inexplicable circumstances, all of that. None of knew that COVID will happen. So they were meant more specific to our business, and they were more related to things that happened internally in the company, but they were inexplicable because they were strange. I mean, it cannot happen like that, but it happened. Will COVID classify? No, I don't think so, because I think what happened to us was a strange set of circumstances, but they happened with a group of investors and entrepreneurs inside the company. COVID is a truly black swan event, right? And I don't think anything can qualify under this category of COVID. COVID has just taken everybody by surprise. And what can entrepreneurs do to plan for it? My honest answer is nothing, because you can't plan for events like this. The only way to plan for a COVID event is to simply pray that it doesn't happen in your lifetime. I don't think you can plan for it, because when the next COVID happens, it may happen 50 years later, it may happen 100 years later. I think it will come in a form that humanity least expects. And therefore, my suggestion as far as things like COVID are concerned, can you plan for it? I don't think you should plan for it. I think you should run your businesses the way you should do in a new world. Whatever is the new normal, you work according to it. You can't plan. These are once in a lifetime, once in a generation, once in a century event. You just hope that you come on this earth and go away before it happens to you. That's all you can do. Nothing else you can do.
Right.
Thank you, Bharti. That was an extremely insightful discussion. And some of the nuggets you shared with us today is something that I'm sure entrepreneurs around the world would love to take away. Welcome again and congratulations to the cohort of champions of the Hans Brinker Leadership Program.
I must repeat what I said earlier, that I'm truly humbled and privileged to be part of the Hans Brinkler Leadership Series. Um, Very happy that you felt that I was fit to be invited to this. And while the conversation has been based on a lot of questions that you asked, and I shared some of my thoughts, I've learned from this as much as I hope some of your audience will also learn from this. So it's been, from my selfish point of view, I thoroughly enjoyed this. So thank you so much for this.
Pleasure is ours, Vaiti. It was a pleasure to have you on the show as well. And Sanjay, to sum it up all, that was remarkably insightful peek into how actually entrepreneurs like Vaiti are creating impact in today's society as well as industry. And I'm sure we are excited to discover and explore more in this journey of the Hans Brinker Leadership Series. In fact, thank you all for joining in. Sanjay and I will be back to share more extraordinary leaders in these extraordinary times. See you soon.